Welcome to the Enneagram with Chelsea and Nika Wow. This is a positively deviant culture podcast anchored in the Enneagram. We're continuing our series on the type 4. In this episode, we're talking about the 4's movement points. Before we get into those, a quick reminder.
Every episode, I want to remind listeners that this isn't a prescriptive or fixed tool, and that our conversations are designed to work with the material and the ideas in an exploratory way. As long as I've been working with the Enneagram, my knowledge and application continues to evolve, and that's what we're here trying to do, to learn together.
Conventionally, the movement points are taught that the 4 integrates, means takes on the very best attributes of the type 1. And that it disintegrates, meaning takes on the very worst attributes of the type 2.
So the advanced learning is that each type integrates and disintegrates to the same two types. And that's more advanced learning because it's a little bit more confusing to trace, I think. But I find it more powerful in the introduction so that people can get a more comprehensive and I think accurate introduction to a type, because it's so important to see how expansive in how we move, that it isn't a fixed categorical framework, that the places where each type moves to are intrinsically important and they expose parts of ourselves.
And when we talk about movement, we're talking about what happens for a type 4 in stress and flourishing. And the reason that we feel it's so important and are prioritizing as part of this intro is because if you're trying to locate yourself, but you notice a lot of other strong aspects of your personality present, movements from the 4 to type 1 and 2 can help explain and add clarity and also create a more holistic package of the personality type 4. We're going to be intentionally polarizing here, intentionally exaggerate the very best and worst of the type 1 and 2 to paint a picture, a snapshot of how this could look for a type 4.
We'll start with type 1. The worst of type 1 is that they are rigid and fixed and self-righteous and concerned with morality. At the worst, ones make all things moral issues and tend to be overly linear and detailed, overly committed to perfection and the best way as the only way, and tend to be highly critical and judgmental, tend to be inflexible, have anger issues, patronizing, controlling, hold grudges. Like, these are some of the worst things about ones, guys. But the reason why these negative attributes are there because they're misuses of strengths, right? So the best of ones sit at the center of reformation and redemption. Ones teach us that things can be better, that there is a good, that there is a right, that there is integrity, and that we can achieve the higher good. And so ones are the most naturally noble. They are the kings and queens of the world in terms of this metaphor, that they are able to stand tall and to be committed to the good of all and to have a deeply accurate and fine tuned moral compass to know what is good and right and true, not just for themselves, but for everyone, to have a sense of fairness and to understand what growth requires of us, the resources that we need. Ones are fabulous mentors and they understand how to improve things and make something better, naturally self correcting, and have a gift of discipline and highly responsible and dutiful, that it's not only about themselves, that it's about that whatever they set their mind and heart to is improving it for those that they love and those that are under their care. And they're also gifted with patience as a result of these qualities. So an enormous amount of good. And then the negative side comes from a misuse of all of those qualities. So if you're a 4, you should relate to some of these in both the best attributes of a 1 and also the worst.
We do have full episodes on the type 1 if you're interested to really go deep in understanding that. But in today's conversation, the real purpose is for or someone trying on the type 4 to understand where some of those things that are present in moments of stress or in moments of just tremendous integration and growth, where they're coming from. And again, the dimensions of this personality as we move across different types.
Yeah, and when fours are integrating to type one, it creates a balance because fours can struggle with motivation and they can struggle with self-absorption and can struggle with structure, right? And so the best of a one provides discipline, provides structure and direction. Ones are more terrestrial in the way of like grounded and centered around the tangible places, working with the material of the world. And fours can easily go into places that are immaterial. And that's their gift, right? Is to live in the immaterial, invisible world. And yet we need to do both, right? There's both material and immaterial. And so the one in fours, when they're really integrated, is what gives them discipline and structure and a groundedness and a different kind of integrity inside all of their emotional experiences and inside their expressions and portaling.
These movement points, encompassing both integration and disintegration, are not just filling out the picture of how you might experience yourself as a 4 or someone who is a 4. They're actually absolutely essential pieces of counterbalance in order to have all of the access that force, like in this example, to portal and then to ground that. Where for a 1, over discipline might sound like a negative, but in this case, for a 4, that level of discipline that the 1 adds becomes a really essential thing in order for the 4s to do their job in the world.
Yeah, that's what's so lovely about really looking into the movement points is because of how in a moment when we're stressed out and have anxiety we can disintegrate and take on, the worst of our type, and how it usually is expressed is where we move to the worst of another type. And then also where we have our internal resources where we can choose to move. Right. And that's what's really useful is that choosing to move to the resources that we actually have access in these other types. And so this is why we have this conversation is one is that so that we can map how we disintegrate, and for fours is going to disintegrate into the more negative stuff around, the ones. And also when they're incredibly integrated and doing fantastic, so much of the qualities of one are necessary for us to do their most excellent job in the world.
Let's move on to the type 2.
Yeah, so type two, all of two's actions at their worst will be about themselves in disguise of serving others. So it can be very tricky in terms of the need to be needed. So twos will give and give and give, but really it's about giving to themselves and trying to make themselves feel better and feel more valuable. Twos can also be controlling in their effort to serve. Twos' downsides are more tricky because they're embedded in their service to others. And so it's more difficult to trace twos' negative. And this is why I'm couching it inside the service of others. It can go sideways very quickly. The controlling nature, the needing to be needed, and giving to get, all of these things tend to be very self-centered in disguise of selflessness and a tendency to expect others to meet their needs without meeting their own needs. The negative point of twos is an unwilling to take care of self while also holding the expectations that others take care of them and validate them. They make others prove their love for them. And at the worst, twos can be punishing and can be withholding. The negative parts of twos are much more inside relationship. So it comes in these kind of tricky areas of control, tricky areas of wanting others to prove their love and to demonstrate love without any communication or without a shared kind of partnership. An oversensitivity of the experience of rejection. So if others disagree with them, or have any kind of feedback, the worst of twos can experience everything as rejection and then hide and be self punishing and need to be chased. But the best of a two, and this is what's always the most fun to express, is twos sit at the center of grace. And the reason why I give this pause is because we throw out the word grace and love, all over the place as humans. But grace, in my opinion, as an eight who understands the nuance of power, I believe grace to be the most powerful force in the universes that we know of. And the reason why is that grace is a force that we do not deserve and we cannot earn. It is the biggest gift that we can even imagine in terms of inside human experience and inside relationship, inside our life. And twos teach us about grace. They teach us what love actually is, that love is everything. It's not just words. It's not just gifts. It's not just service. It's not just any one thing. That twos teach us that love is expansive. It is everything and also not what we think it is. They teach us about selflessness, how to give to other, how to serve other, how to sit with other people's pain. And they teach us about compassion, how to hold others' hand metaphorically and literally inside hardship and struggling. And twos are the ultimate healers. They understand what others need. So much so that twos help us understand what we need before we even know what we need. Fours should be able to relate to both. The integrated elements of twos, this ultimate place of grace and compassion and love and healing and the ability to serve other, right? And then also the place of neediness and a lack of self awareness that twos at their worst don't have. They're not connected to themselves in a way of what they need or how to even take care of themselves. So fours should be able to relate to all of this. And again, how interesting it is that in order for fours to do their job really well in the world is to be able to integrate to the best of a two. Fours naturally are incredibly self-oriented, and that self orientation can easily slip into self absorption, which we'll get to that in the paradox episode. But twos teach us how to serve other, how to keep other as an equal priority to self. And that the purpose of life and each other is to sit with each other inside these places of incredible pain and loss. And yet, how to have hope. Twos teach fours that it's not the ultimate place to sit. Fours can end up overly committed to what's missing and the loss and the brokenness. And twos help fours heal and grow and have hope. There's a restoration that occurs, and that there's grace that is something absolutely mysterious and unknowable, that there are no depths that can reveal grace. Grace just is the ultimate kind of experience of humanity in any direction. And so these are the qualities of twos that help fours come to places that are not dependent on themselves, their sight, their knowledge, their expansiveness, all of the things that fours have for themselves, that they can look to other and they can partner and engage the other.
You talked about the potential for self centeredness and maybe even this kind of temperamental victimization or need to be rescued. How does the two play into that? Does the four have the power to rescue themselves when they tap into the qualities of two and give themselves grace?
Yes, that's excellent. Yeah, fours can slip into exactly as you said. They can over prioritize the brokenness and the loss and what's missing because that's their gift, which we'll talk about in the next episode, is to see all the things that others don't see. And yet they can get trapped there. And twos are the ones that pull us out. Twos are the ones that can engage healing. And in that process of healing and grace is the ultimate place of hope. And so, yes, that's exactly right. When fours move to two, they don't get stuck. Twos are incredibly resourceful and don't get stuck easily. Like twos at their best do not get stuck. They find a way. They are movers and shakers and are incredibly resourceful in the world in terms of their abilities and where they can find healthy work and how they engage relationship. And that's what twos teach us is that we need each other. Twos and sixes very much teach us about interdependence. And fours can be very much the lone wolf by themselves and doing their own thing and feel misunderstood and very alone because they're portals. The work that they're up to is often a very lonely place because most people cannot access what they can access. And so, what fours often do is they'll be more devoted to the experience rather than the gift that it can be to help others heal and to help others grow, which is what twos and also ones provide. Ones are more about growth and development, while twos are the healers and the mystical expressions of grace and love that are absolutely otherworldly. And again, we throw out these words, but they're the most magnificent unknowable places. Grace and mercy are really unknowable places, right? And twos are the ones that it can express those things. And ones are about growing and developing and creating and constructing a world that is good for all and having integrity inside that process. And so you can see how useful these qualities are and how they absolutely hone in the parts of a four that are so otherworldly. The ones and twos bring it down to earth and bring it into individual people and families and communities in a way that is immediately practical.
In the Core Brilliance episode, we talked about fours and the metaphor of the ocean, not only the depths, but the capacity to hold it all. Or many of us are just fishes kind of swimming around in that ocean. And we also started to hint at some nuance between the ability to sit with pain and how there's a distinction between fours and the ability to tap into and get to that depth of pain and sit with it for themselves. And then what twos provide for them and being able to sit with that pain with others.
Exactly. Fours are very good at sitting and being inside their own pain. And when they move to the best of the two, they can also sit with other people's pain. And then conversely, twos, when they go to their four self, can start sitting with their own pain and stop only being with everyone else's. So, yeah, that's an incredibly good combination. And then ones are the places where there's redemption and reconstruction, where twos provide a kind of healing. Ones pick up after the healing and start reconstructing and rebuilding and growing into something amazing that's continual and forever.
We also talked about the four as the archaeologist leaning on the past, being that kind of family historian or an actual archaeologist, like digging for what we can learn from history and having the vision to bring it to the present. It almost seems like one is that opportunity to carry it into the future.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this a little more in the paradoxes too, that fours can be fixated on the past and makes it difficult for them to be present or at all future minded. And so both ones and twos are very in the now. Ones and twos are individuals who are interested in what is happening right now in the community, in the moment, in a society, in a business. Ones and twos are able to apply their skills right now in the moment in very tangible ways. A particular problem or a particular dysfunction or a particular disease or a particular mobility issue. Like they are very much in the work, and that can be emotional or physical, but it's very much in the moment. Fours are diggers and rehearse the past, which is very important and to understand lineage and to trace the sources of things. But, fours can get stuck there. This is again why it's so important to be able to access all parts of ourselves and all nine types.
And the gifts of all this X-ray kind of vision for a four and the capacity to hold all of this ability to see. and then the burden that that becomes. And that's where the 1 and 2 come in to help them bring it forward and kind of not get so stuck, but actually put it all to use and round out that burden forward.
Absolutely. Twos are able to identify what's useful very quickly. Like, what is the most practically useful thing in this moment that we can apply? And ones are practical in the sense of, is there a structure or a system or discipline that's required to sustain that, to sustain a growth trajectory? You can build it, metaphorically, architecture. Fours are so good at the mysterious places and the ethereal places, the invisible, the immaterial, that to have these two types that give enormous amount of path. Twos and ones can create a plan and a path that is very immediate and then also kind of sustaining, that gives fours direction, also gives fours an ability to use their gifts in specific places and know where that is. So the 1 and 2 in them help define and locate a plan for their work.
So you were able to surface some key themes of what both ones and twos do to contribute to a four and really add more power to what the fours already bring in terms of giftedness. In our next episode, we'll continue the conversation on the type four by digging into their paradoxes and what truths are revealed in the dichotomy of that. If you'd like to work with us, you can find us on LinkedIn or hit like and follow to get more notifications.